There's something about the INFJ personality that often feels a little different, almost like it doesn't fit into the mold of what's expected. If you're an INFJ, or you know someone who is, you've probably noticed that this way of thinking doesn't always line up with the typical patterns most people follow. Many INFJs describe feeling out of place, like they process the world in a way that's hard for others to understand. This isn't just about being an introvert or being sensitive. This is something deeper. INFJs, often called the advocates in the Myers-Briggs system, make up only about 1% of the population. But even with that small number, they carry a presence that's hard to miss. They tend to see beneath the surface, pick up on things that others miss, and feel emotions very deeply. While these traits might sound like gifts, they often come with struggles. Struggles that feel familiar to those who identify as neurodivergent. So what does that word mean? Neurodivergent is a term that refers to people whose minds work differently than what's considered typical. It includes people with autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorders, and other cognitive differences. It's not a disorder, just a different way of thinking and experiencing the world. And when you start to look closely at how INFJs process information, emotions, and social situations, it becomes clear that there are strong overlaps between INFJ traits and what many neurodivergent individuals experience every day. This video explores 6 clear reasons why the INFJ way of thinking often feels deeply neurodivergent. We'll look at how INFJs think, how they feel, how they process the world around them, and why so many of them feel like they're walking a different path. These reasons don't mean that every INFJ is neurodivergent, or that every neurodivergent person is an INFJ. But the similarities are hard to ignore. If you've ever felt like your mind works on another level, if the noise of everyday life feels overwhelming, if you sense things no one else notices, or if your thoughts move in ways that are hard to explain, then this might help you understand why. There's nothing wrong with thinking differently. In fact, that difference might be your biggest strength. Let's take a closer look at what makes the INFJ mind so unique, and why it often feels like it belongs in the neurodivergent world. Reason number 1. Nonlinear thinking and pattern recognition. NFJs are known for their deep intuitive style of thinking. Their dominant cognitive function is something called introverted intuition, which doesn't follow a straight path. It doesn't move from point A to point B in a direct line. Instead, it gathers impressions, patterns, and bits of information from different sources, and then suddenly connects them in a way that feels like a leap rather than a step. This is called nonlinear thinking, and it's one of the most defining traits of the INFJ mind. Many INFJs describe this as just knowing something without being able to explain how. They might sense when something is about to go wrong, or they might understand a person's true intentions before others do. These insights come from seeing patterns that are buried beneath the surface. Instead of focusing on one small detail at a time, INFJs often take in a broad view and pick up links between ideas, emotions, or events that others don't notice. They connect abstract pieces together and then pull out a bigger picture from it. This ability can be both a gift and a challenge. On one hand, it allows INFJs to have visionary ideas, to understand people on a deep level, and to predict outcomes that others miss. On the other hand, it can be hard to explain these insights. Because INFJs don't always think in a step-by-step way, they may struggle to communicate how they arrived at their conclusions. Others may see them as vague, confusing, or even too deep, and that can lead to frustration or feeling misunderstood. This kind of thinking is not common in most people, but it is something that shows up in many neurodivergent minds. People with autism or ADHD, for example, often process information in a non-linear way. They might jump from topic to topic quickly, make unusual connections, or see systems in a way that seems invisible to others. The INFJ style of connecting ideas through patterns and intuition mirrors these types of thought processes closely. In school or at work, INFJs may struggle because their way of thinking doesn't always fit the system. Education and business environments often reward people who can break tasks down into steps, follow instructions, and explain their process in clear terms. But INFJs don't naturally work like that. They're more likely to take time to reflect, make mental connections, and then produce something fully formed. It can look like they're not doing anything, until suddenly they produce something powerful and original. This can also make INFJs prone to self-doubt, because their insights come in sudden waves, and because they can't always explain the steps, they might worry that their thoughts aren't valid. They might second-guess their intuition, especially if the people around them are more logical or practical. But the truth is that this way of thinking is valuable. It's just different. INFJs also tend to see symbols and metaphors in everyday life. They often view the world in a symbolic way, where everything represents something deeper. This symbolic thinking is another form of pattern recognition, where emotions, memories, and abstract concepts are tied together into something meaningful. It allows INFJs to tell stories, create art, or give advice in ways that touch people on an emotional level. And again, this is something often found in neurodivergent thinkers, people who take in the world in layers and who find hidden meaning in what others see as ordinary. In short, the INFJ's nonlinear way of thinking is one of the main reasons why their minds feel different. It doesn't follow the rules most people expect. It works in images, connections, and emotional truths. That difference doesn't make them broken or wrong. It makes them insightful. And it's one of the reasons their minds so often resemble those of neurodivergent individuals. Reason number 2, deep empathy and emotional absorption. Another key trait of the INFJ is their intense empathy. INFJs don't just understand how others feel, they actually feel it with them. They absorb emotions like a sponge. If someone around them is angry, sad, excited, or anxious, the INFJ will often take on that emotional state as if it were their own. This is due to their auxiliary function, called extroverted feeling. It focuses outward and constantly scans the emotional tone of the people and environment around them. This emotional absorption is more than just compassion. It's a deep sensitivity that can affect every part of an INFJ's life. In social settings, they might pick up on tension that no one is talking about. In a group of friends, they can feel when someone is left out or upset, even if that person never says a word. This skill makes them incredible listeners and trusted confidants. People often feel understood by INFJs without needing to explain much. But this kind of empathy comes at a cost. Because INFJs absorb the feelings of others so strongly, they can become overwhelmed very quickly. If they're around conflict, anger, or stress, it can drain them to the point of exhaustion. They often need time alone, just to sort through what they're feeling and figure out which emotions actually belong to them. Without enough quiet time or space, they can start to shut down or feel lost. This emotional sensitivity is often seen in highly sensitive people and it's also common in many neurodivergent individuals. People with autism, for example, may not always express emotions in expected ways, but many feel deeply and struggle with emotional overload. The same goes for people with ADHD, who often experience emotional highs and lows very intensely. INFJs share this kind of emotional depth and the need to manage it carefully. Because of this, INFJs are sometimes mistaken for being overly emotional or too sensitive. But their emotional radar is actually a strength. It allows them to sense what's really going on beneath the surface. They can comfort others, mediate conflicts, and offer support in ways that feel personal and healing. In the right environment, this makes them powerful leaders and caregivers. But in the wrong environment, one that is loud, tense, or emotionally toxic, it can break them down. This trait also makes INFJs very selective about their relationships. They tend to avoid shallow conversations and surface-level friendships. They want real connection, truth, vulnerability. Small talk feels like noise to them. They would rather sit in silence than pretend to enjoy a conversation that doesn't matter. And because they are so tuned in emotionally, they can often tell when someone isn't being genuine. That kind of emotional dishonesty is very hard for them to be around. What makes this especially difficult is that INFJs often feel like they have to hide this side of themselves. In many cultures, emotional sensitivity is seen as weakness. People are expected to toughen up or not take things so seriously. But for INFJs, these feelings are real. They're not imagined or exaggerated. They are simply more in tune with the emotional energy around them than most people are. And that's not something they can easily turn off. In many ways, this kind of deep emotional connection is another sign that INFJs think in a neurodivergent way. Their emotional system doesn't operate at a surface level. It goes deep. It takes in more than most people can process. And just like people on the neurodivergent spectrum, INFJs often need tools and support to manage that sensitivity in a healthy way. This intense empathy, while challenging, is also what allows INFJs to make a real difference. When they're supported and understood, they become some of the most emotionally intelligent and compassionate people in any group. Their sensitivity isn't just a trait, it's a gift, and it's one of the strongest reasons their minds don't follow the typical path. Reason number 3, intense focus on meaning and purpose. INFJs don't just want to live, they want their life to matter. They're constantly searching for purpose, meaning, and emotional depth in everything they do. It's not enough to just work a job, follow routines, or get through the day. They need to understand the bigger picture behind their actions. They ask questions like, why am I doing this? What's the deeper reason? How does this help people or improve the world? This constant search for meaning is tied to how INFJs think and process life. Their introverted intuition pulls them toward long-term visions, deeper truths, and core values. At the same time, their extroverted feeling wants to connect with others and create harmony. These two forces work together to push the INFJ toward causes they believe in, things that serve humanity or offer emotional value. Many INFJs end up working in fields like counseling, writing, teaching, art, or social activism. They don't just want success, they want their success to have soul. But this drive to find meaning can also become overwhelming. INFJs may feel restless or even anxious when they don't have a clear sense of direction. They might start questioning everything, relationships, jobs, goals, if they no longer feel connected to them on a deep level. It can lead to long periods of searching, reflection, or even isolation. While others might be satisfied with simple pleasures or short-term goals, INFJs often need something bigger, something that feels spiritually or emotionally right. This intense focus on meaning mirrors what's often seen in neurodivergent individuals, especially those on the autism spectrum. Many autistic people develop special interests, topics or causes they care about deeply, and study with full focus. These aren't just hobbies, they become part of their identity. The INFJ's relationship with purpose works in a very similar way. Once something matters to them, it becomes a central part of how they think and live. It also means INFJs can become deeply involved in one subject or mission, sometimes to the point of obsession. They might read everything about it, talk about it constantly, or build their lives around it. If they lose that sense of meaning, it can feel like their world is falling apart. And because their inner world is so important to them, they may have a hard time explaining this need to others. In social settings, this focus on meaning can make INFJs seem intense or different. They often avoid small talk and light topics because they want to talk about things that matter: philosophy, relationships, personal growth, social justice. Not everyone is ready for that kind of depth, so INFJs may struggle to find people who get them. This can lead to feelings of loneliness, especially if they feel like no one shares their passion or emotional range. At work, this mindset can also cause problems. INFJs may find it hard to stay motivated in jobs that feel empty or routine. Even if the job pays well or looks good on paper, if it doesn't line up with their values, they'll start to feel drained or disconnected. They may even quit or change careers multiple times in search of something that feels right. This can confuse others who don't understand why they can't just stick with it. But for INFJs, it's not about stability, it's about meaning. This passion can also make INFJs seem intense when they talk about the things they care about. They're not trying to be dramatic, they just feel deeply. And when they believe in something, they put their whole heart into it. This level of emotional investment can be hard for others to match, especially if they operate on a more practical or surface-level wavelength. In short, INFJs need purpose like most people need air. Without it, they start to feel lost. Their need for meaning goes far beyond most people's desire for goals or achievement. It touches the core of who they are. And this deep connection to purpose, identity, and emotional truth is another reason their minds often resemble those of neurodivergent individuals. Reason number 4. Struggles with executive functioning. Even though INFJs are known for their powerful ideas and visions, they often struggle when it comes to actually following through. They may have a clear picture in their minds of what they want to create, but turning that idea into a series of practical steps can be a challenge. This is called executive functioning, the ability to plan, organize, start, and complete tasks. And it's an area where many INFJs run into problems. This struggle can show up in a lot of ways. INFJs may procrastinate, not because they're lazy, but because they're overwhelmed. When they look at a task, they don't just see the first step. They see every step all at once. The whole process can feel like too much, especially if it's connected to something emotional or important to them. They might freeze, avoid it, or spend hours thinking about it without doing anything. It's not a lack of motivation. It's a lack of mental clarity on where and how to begin. Once they do start something, they can get stuck in the details. INFJs are perfectionists by nature. They want everything to feel just right, and they're very sensitive to emotional tone, aesthetics, and message. So they may revise things over and over, second-guessing their choices and struggling to finish. This leads to missed deadlines, burnout, or the feeling that they're constantly behind. This kind of behavior is very common among people with ADHD and other neurodivergent profiles. Executive functioning struggles are one of the key markers of ADHD. People with ADHD often know exactly what they want to do. They just can't seem to make their brain take the steps. For INFJs, the same thing happens, especially when emotions are involved. Because they feel everything so deeply, they can become paralyzed by the fear of doing something wrong or disappointing others. Another reason INFJs struggle with tasks is that they get bored easily if the work doesn't feel meaningful. They may start strong on a project that excites them, only to lose interest once the emotional energy fades. They crave novelty and emotional connection, not repetition. Tasks that feel dull, mechanical, or impersonal can quickly become unbearable. This causes a cycle of starting and stopping, or jumping from one idea to the next without finishing. On the outside, this can make INFJs look disorganized or inconsistent, but internally, they're fighting a constant battle between their vision and their energy. They know what they want to do. They can see the end result in full color, but turning that vision into reality requires more structure than their mind naturally provides. INFJs may also have a complicated relationship with time. Because they're so focused on long-term meaning, they often lose track of short-term details. They might forget appointments, underestimate how long something will take, or run late even when they're trying not to. It's not that they don't care, it's that their brain is working in another direction. They're more focused on what something means than when it needs to happen. These executive functioning challenges can lead to guilt and self-blame. INFJs are hard on themselves. When they fall behind or forget something, they don't just feel bad, they question their worth. They may think they're failing or disappointing others, even when they're doing their best. This emotional weight only adds to the stress, making it harder to move forward. In school or work settings, these issues can be misunderstood. Teachers or bosses might assume the INFJ is lazy, disorganized, or unmotivated. But what's really happening is a mismatch between how the INFJ brain works and what the environment expects. When given flexibility, emotional support, and a chance to work in their own way, INFJs can thrive. But without that, they may struggle just to keep up. These difficulties with starting, planning, and finishing tasks are another sign that the INFJ mind doesn't always fit the mold. And once again, it shows how their mental wiring overlaps with many neurodivergent experiences. Reason number 5. Sensory sensitivities and overwhelm. INFJs are highly sensitive to their environment. Loud noises, bright lights, crowds, and chaotic spaces can be overwhelming. Even strong smells, scratchy fabrics, or uncomfortable seating can throw off their focus and mood. They may not always talk about it, but they feel it. Their minds and bodies react to their surroundings in a way that is often intense and hard to ignore. This sensitivity isn't just emotional, it's physical. INFJs tend to absorb more from their surroundings than others do. They process sounds, visuals, and movement on a deeper level. This can make them very aware of small changes or unspoken shifts in a room, but it can also wear them down. Too much noise, too many people talking, or flashing lights can push them into sensory overload. Sensory overload happens when the brain receives more input than it can handle. For INFJs, this often results in stress, fatigue, irritability, or a need to withdraw. They might become quiet, shut down, or look for a quiet space to recover. This is their nervous system trying to reset. It's not about being antisocial, it's about survival. This kind of sensory reaction is a common trait in many neurodivergent people. For example, individuals with autism or sensory processing disorder often experience the world in a very similar way. They feel overwhelmed by things others don't notice, and they need more time or space to process everything. INFJs share this trait, even if it's not always visible from the outside. In daily life, these sensitivities can affect everything from where INFJs choose to live to what jobs they can handle. A noisy office or a crowded party might sound normal to some people, but for an INFJ, it can feel like too much. They often prefer quiet environments, natural light, and soft sounds. These aren't just preferences, they're needs. When their environment feels calm and balanced, they function better in every way. Clutter can also affect INFJs more than others. A messy space can feel like visual noise, making it harder for them to think clearly. This is because INFJs take in a lot through their senses, even when they're not trying to. They don't just see a pile of papers, they feel the disorder it creates. This constant input can drain their energy and make it hard to focus. Even music or background noise can be too much. If someone is talking and there's music playing and a TV on in the next room, it might all blend together into a loud blur. INFJs might not be able to concentrate, and they may feel anxious or overstimulated without knowing why. They often need to reduce input to stay balanced. This kind of sensory experience isn't always easy to explain. Many INFJs learn to hide it or work around it, but inside, they're constantly managing input, filtering, reacting, and recovering. And when they can't control their environment, it can take a toll on their mental and emotional health. This is another area where the INFJ experience overlaps strongly with neurodivergent profiles. The way they process their surroundings, the way their body reacts to too much input, and the need to step back or unplug, all of this shows that their minds are wired in a unique and sensitive way. Reason number 6, feeling misunderstood and isolated. If there's one feeling most INFJs know well, it's the sense of being misunderstood. It often starts early in life. While other kids may focus on simple games or follow group dynamics, the INFJ is already thinking deeply about people, about emotions, about what everything means. They notice things that others don't, and they process the world in a way that's hard to explain. Over time, this difference can start to feel like distance. INFJs are usually quiet observers. They often listen more than they speak, and when they do speak, they go deep. But not everyone wants to go deep. Many social groups reward surface-level conversation, quick jokes, or casual interaction. INFJs struggle with this. They're not built for small talk. They want to know what someone really thinks, what they fear, what they dream about. And when that kind of connection isn't returned, it leaves them feeling out of place. This leads to another challenge, masking. INFJs often learn to hide parts of themselves just to fit in. They may pretend to enjoy certain things, act more upbeat, or hold back their insights so they don't make others uncomfortable. But this comes at a cost. When you constantly filter who you are, it becomes harder to feel seen. The more they adapt to meet others' expectations, the more they feel invisible. Over time, this can create a sense of loneliness, even in a crowd. INFJs might have friends, family, or co-workers around them, but still feel like no one really knows them. They long for someone to understand how they think and feel without needing to explain it all. This deep desire for connection, combined with the frequent experience of being misunderstood, can lead to emotional exhaustion. many neurodivergent individuals experience something similar. Autistic people, for example, often speak about being on a different wavelength than others. They see the world in their own way, and they communicate in ways that don't always match social norms. This can lead to the same kind of social isolation, where people are physically present, but emotional connection is missing. For INFJs, this isolation doesn't always mean being alone. It means not being understood, and because their minds are always analyzing, comparing, and reflecting, this feeling can become very strong. They might start to question if something is wrong with them. They might feel broken, when in fact, they're just different. But difference isn't a flaw. INFJs have a unique way of thinking, feeling, and connecting with the world. Their depth, insight, and sensitivity are rare. And while that can make them feel isolated, it also means they have something powerful to offer. Feeling misunderstood doesn't mean you're doing life wrong. It might just mean you're wired for a deeper kind of connection than most people are ready to give. That's not your fault. It's part of what makes you who you are. The INFJ mind is different. It doesn't follow the usual patterns. It sees what others miss, feels what others hide, and asks questions that many people never even think about. This difference is often seen as a mystery, a gift, or even a burden. But what it really is a form of neurodiversity. Across these 6 signs, nonlinear thinking, deep empathy, a strong need for purpose, struggles with executive function, sensory sensitivity, and a lasting sense of being misunderstood, we see how the INFJ experience mirrors many parts of the neurodivergent journey. These aren't flaws, they're traits, and in the right setting, with the right understanding, they can become incredible strengths. Recognizing this overlap can help INFJs feel less alone. It can help explain why the world sometimes feels too loud, too fast, or too shallow. And it can offer tools, like boundaries, self-acceptance, and better support, that allow INFJs to thrive. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to fit into a typical mold. The goal is to live honestly as who you are, to trust the way your mind works, even if it doesn't look like everyone else's. Because in a world that often values speed over depth and noise over meaning, your quiet insight might be exactly what's needed. You're not broken. You're just thinking on a different level. And that difference is something to be proud of.